Violence is what happens when people run out of good ideas. I just finished Abaddon's Gate, the third book in the Expanse series by James S.A. Corey, and this is another solid entry by these two authors, and another great entry into the Expanse series, which is very slowly becoming one of my favorite science fiction sagas that I've come across. Having said that, though, I did not like this entry as much as the previous two. And while there is still a lot good about this book, and if you're a fan of the first two, you're probably going to be a fan of this one, I have to admit it's my least favorite of the first three. This book is far more narrow in its scope compared to the first two. And I think because of that, it really suffers. This book is a setup novel. This entire book is setting up humanity, setting up the characters, setting up the plot to get much, much, much larger than the previous two entries. And while I really appreciate that James S.A. Corey is taking it to that next level, it's taking us there, it's doing that setup, and what it's setting up is very interesting, this book kind of suffers because, again, it's a lot of setup, and you're left wanting more. You're left waiting for that delivery, but the delivery starts in the next book. So I think a lot of people might read this one and be like, I didn't love it as much. This might work for some people because there are some moments in here that are really, really good and they're golden. But for me, I felt like it just wasn't quite enough. The characters, of course, remain pretty solid overall. Holden and his crew, I can't complain at all. But the new POVs, I wasn't as big of a fan of. I liked Anna, who is this clergy member. She's a part of the United Methodist Church, and we really get to see what space and the wider universe looks like through the eyes of a religious person. And, as a religious person myself, who actually works for a Methodist church, I really liked her perspective. I thought it was very interesting, and James S.A. Corey does a very good job handling religious topics, which is always refreshing because a lot of people don't. As for the other two characters, though, I'm going to be honest, I didn't love them. Melba is probably the more interesting one here. She's got this whole revenge arc thing going for her, and while I like revenge, huge fan of revenge in my novels, I just felt like she was undercooked. And that was kind of surprising because I felt like the villains, if you can call them villains, of the last two books were a bit more interesting. She's a bit more morally complex than any character we've come across so far. And I like the idea of what James S.A. Corey is going for here, this whole revenge thing. But it doesn't really work. And her revenge doesn't really plan out or work out the way she wants it to. And it feels like she's defeated pretty easily. And I don't know. I feel like the consequences of her actions were not long-term enough. And maybe they will be. Maybe I'm totally wrong. Maybe her actions will have long-term effects for the rest of the series. But based on this book, I really feel like the consequences to her actions were not, the ramifications were not large enough. They were very temporary. It felt like they got solved in 50 pages. So Melba left me wanting, and the last character, Bull, I didn't care about him at all, to be honest. I thought he was just a very boring character who was basically used to just move certain plot points forward and move the story forward. But I feel like he had no sort of individual, he felt like a nothing burger, to be honest. He felt like he had no motivation of his own, that he was entirely there to just push the plot and story forward. And that just does not work for me. He's one of those characters, I swear I don't think anybody's going to remember, 2-3 books from now. He's instantly forgettable. He has no charisma. His story arc is very flat and boring. And I didn't really like him. But overall, the characters continue to be good, especially Holden and his crew, who are the heart of this story so far. As for the plot, again, just not as intriguing as the last two entries. The last two they feel like thrillers. They feel like you're reading space opera thrillers. And this book is much more boring. It's much more contemplative. It's much more You know, should humanity have access to a space station that's going to get them across the universe? Should humanity own the stars? Is that really our domain, or is our domain just this place, this solar system, the Earth, etc.? And while I like the ideas brought up, it's not as interesting as the last two books, and it feels much slower in comparison because of those things. And again, it's just a lot of setup. It's a lot of setup for the rest of the series. It's going somewhere that is very interesting, but we're not quite there yet. It kind of feels like when you're on a long road trip to like Disney and you're like in like South Carolina, and it's like, yeah, you're almost there technically, but also you're not there yet. So you got to sit in the car for just a little bit longer. And while I just appreciate where we're going, it's not what I want it to be. So the the page count I felt it more here in comparison to the last two books. Thematically, I think this book is probably the richest besides Leviathan Wigs, because there's this contemplation of humans in the greater universe. Is this really our place? Are we as a species making the right choice by allowing ourselves to have this space station built by, these deity-like beings? And there's also some interesting ideas brought up here. What James Holden goes through here is very interesting while he's on the space station. No spoilers, obviously, but he has this revelation moment that is very, very cool. It feels kind of like something from Sun Eater, even though Sun Eater's an older series than this. And I really like that. There's some like cosmic, like high level stuff that I really liked. And I think the last like 20% of this book was the best part, because we finally got to see like the story and the action and all that build up begin to start happening. But ultimately, it just didn't work for me as much as I would have liked, because of how hot I was on those first two books. And because of all those things, I'm going to give it like an 8.5 out of 10. While I think the plot is still solid and the characters are still solid, it's just a lot of setup for me. And while I appreciate that sometimes that's what you got to do in your book, it's just not my favorite thing ever. So it's not as good as the first two books, but it's still solid in my opinion. So I'm very much looking forward to Cibola's Burn. I'm really enjoying The Expanse so far, and I can't wait to see where James S.A. Corey takes me next.